Hi everyone. Hi. Interestingly, only one person here can pronounce my name well. A guy. It's very simple. Olorunfemi. Yeah. Well, I will save you trying to do that. It's not very long as well. Um, I'm glad to be here. It's my second time in Newcastle and my first time in this community. And tonight I want to talk about building smarter apps with Microsoft's Copilot. We'll talk about Copilot Studio and .NET as well. So there is a central question there. It says, are you studying your software development or is AI taking the control? This is actually the thought process I've put in the way I evaluate the current changes and evolution of AI, especially since last 3 years when it became more open and um, accessible to the general public. Back in like maybe 7, 8 years ago, I used to hear about IBM Watson and some Google kind of AI stuff trying to play chess and Go, and then I used to think about some of the prospects that they are bringing, into how we interact with each other, and as software engineers in the way that we interact with our softwares as well. Introduction there. I'm a senior platform engineer at Inflow, and basically I helped the development teams to ship faster and also building tools that support development team. I'm also I have a background in .NET um, development. I started way back in not too long ago for some of you, but way back when Windows Phone 7 was out. It was my yeah, yeah, it was my introduction to the software development world with Silverlight and XNA, and then I moved to um, adopting Xamarin. Now it's dead, and then from there to backend stuff with ESP, for then MVC, web forms, Win forms, and then a lot of WPF stuff, and then I now diversified to building more of backend systems and now into platforms. So it's been a very interesting journey for me, and 8 to 12 years in all. I'm very amazed by what AI brings today. So agenda for today, keep it brief. So first, I'll talk about the AI first vision, and this is not my vision. This is Microsoft vision, and it's about Microsoft Copilot Everywhere, extending AI's reach. And I'll also be talking about Microsoft Copilot as well, which I'm sure many of us have used in one way or the other. And we talk about how it embeds reasoning and contextual intelligence. So how it work. Then, of course, .NET, how this applies to .NET. And I'm talking about the standardization and plumbing for enterprise business. Then talking about semantic kernel as well, how it also helps to standardize access to large language models. Then, of course, I will give some practical takeaways and we have a lot of time for questions. All right. When I was designing this slide, there was this meme I was trying to bring it in. There was a robot that was looking up and it was telling another robot, hey, something everywhere. I don't know who knows that meme. Like box everywhere. But I didn't bring it in because it's kind of negative. But the point is AI is all around us now, and at first, yeah, at first I felt the tech giants are kind of shoving it up into our throats. Like you have to use this. It was shaped on Windows, and it was added to so many of the productivity tools that we used. But I think I've come to accept that AI is now everywhere, baked into the operating system and almost all the softwares we have now, and we have to accept that. For developers, Copilot brings access, a very fantastic integration into GitHub as GitHub Copilot. There's a freemium, but it's paid if you want to enjoy it, and it brings access to developers from the IDEs to do code completion, which is very incredible, and also it has support for connecting with MCP servers. That's you can have MCP servers or connectors that does specific things. It can be talking to an external API, talking to your database. You can get all these features right in your GitHub Copilot, and I'm sure many of us will have tried this in the last since it launched. Then of course in the Microsoft ecosystem of business apps, we have the Office 365, which is Microsoft 365 Copilot as well, which is a kind of an ecosystem focused AI usage that helps to power up um, or to empower Microsoft products. So we're going to talk about it later as well. And of course, the Copilot Studio. This last one is very interesting as it brings a lot of more business abilities into the Microsoft tools that helps to empower business. So this is what I've derived about the Microsoft AI first vision, and the journey is quite interesting. Yeah, yeah. I've already talked a lot about Copilot Studio. Um, it integrates directly into your IDEs, and interestingly, it works also on GitHub. I was trying to create a new repository on GitHub for one of my demos, and I saw a prompt like I should, when you're creating a repository, you see this repo name, description. Do you want to add a README, some license? So I saw a prompt. Copilot was asking me to describe what I want to build, and it is going to create the entire project. I was like, wow. So I did tell it, okay, I want to build an application about this with a single prompt. And 25 minutes later, it's created a PR with the entire functionality. Um, PR was very bad. I had to discard it, but but it was quite impressive. In fact, I didn't discard it. I just checked I checked the branch and I kind of fixed it, and I built my feature over some of the templating and scaffolding that it has done. But it was really quite impressive, and it took about 25 minutes trying to add up all the pieces together, both the UI and the and the and the backend. Though it used a UI framework that I was not familiar with, so I got rid of that. The interesting thing here is that GitHub Copilot is a very powerful tool, and if you have followed the journey, it is very remarkable the way it seamlessly integrates into some of this IDE, especially the VS Code, which is quite a success for Microsoft. For Microsoft 365 Copilot, it brings strong integration into a lot of Microsoft tools, Teams, OneDrive, Outlook, and a lot flow, um, different kind of tools that you have access to this to Copilot. I'll be talking more about the use case as we go on. Yeah, here is it. So with Copilot, I'm sure you're familiar with some of this. In Teams, you can recap a meeting. You can try to, if there's a meeting, you can use Copilot to help prepare for your meeting. And for those that have not been using this, of course, in their workplace, it has to be enabled by the IT. But it's a very, very interesting piece of software. That's because you find it in your Outlook, in your Word. You find it on the central Microsoft 365 as well, drafting emails, replies, scheduling calendars, and all kind of things, summarization. It's all kind of very interesting offerings there that Microsoft is pushing. And yeah, so this is the top bit, Copilot Studio. So you've heard of GitHub Copilot, you've heard of the Microsoft 365 Copilot, and now the Copilot Studio. So what Copilot Studio does basically is that it bridges the gap between the user via Copilot and system of agents that powers business automation, flows, and connectivity. That's basically what Copilot Studio do. And I think you can access it from the web. I'm not sure if it's available for individual or personal Microsoft accounts. So you have to be connected to Microsoft 365 to use it. So we might be talking soon more about agents and now they enable this flow. So this is Copilot with human argumentation. So you interact with it in natural language, prompt by text prompt or voice, and then you can customize this prompt to be personal. You can as well adopt different persona in the way you interact with Copilot. Act like this, so check in with this, and of course, those agents enables automation, consistency, and access into different products that runs behind the hood. Yeah, so it's Copilot Studio used to create and configure agents. One of one of my in terms of the topic, building smarter apps, one of the very interesting thing I tested in Copilot Studio was setting up um, a chat system for the website. So if you have a website, you have customer service that responds to visitors' questions, right? Um, before you need to, if you want to have an agent to respond to your website visitors, right? You need to use something like the Microsoft Bot SDK and then plug it in into your knowledge base so that your site can be up 247. It can get queries or support tickets from users. With the Copilot Studio, I was able to do this within 5 seconds. So I think we should be able to demo it if there is time. I mean, who has tried that feature on Microsoft Copilot today? So all it will ask for is the URL of your website, and you put it in, and then it generates a bot, ready bot that can do basic things like FAQ based on indexing of all the content of your website. Then you can extend that even further to have access um, to more information about the business in terms of routing requests to different teams, creating case tickets, and also perhaps if you have a CRM that manages your tickets, you can as well plug those things to using agents or connectors. These are some of the agents that are available in 365 stuff that works with SharePoint, employee, Teams, interpreter, project management, researcher, analyst, and skills. and many more. Many of them are in preview. Some of them are out already. And there's an ocean of, when I say an ocean now of agents flowing into the ecosystem from the open source communities and from businesses. Actually, most software companies are releasing their agents into the market, and this you can integrate this into your workflow. All right. So in summary, the Microsoft Copilot can also enable search within your organization. There was a quote from there was a message from Bill Gates when he was talking about the inefficiencies of Bing um, being a search engine that could pull data from the websites on the internet, but it was very difficult to have something that can search information within an organization. It was a very difficult problem that they've not solved back then when it was still with Microsoft. So in summary, you can power search, you can connect to your agents, and you can automate these processes. So as a developer, how do you come in? Or as a software engineer, how do you build smarter apps that can connect with large language models, and they can transform the way your app interacts with the users? So we're going to talk about the .NET 9 priority for AI, the access, and the standardization. So the focus is moving from AI as an afterthought to something that is fundamental as a platform capacity. And this is very, very interesting because at a time, people expressed their view about AI is like a choice. We're not going to bring this in. We're not going to adopt this. Let's test the waters. Let's wait for a few years. But the way the technology is evolving now, I think any company that do not adapt some kind of AI-based automation into their system, in the next 10, 15 years, they might become extinct, and their competitors that are empowering their products, even if it's not the entire flow, some very critical flows with AI, then they will have the market share to take for themselves. So the priority here is the cloud native and AI core teams, and of course, we are bringing this access to generative AI and large language models. Now, consumable, reliable for every .NET developer. The reason why this is very interesting is over the last 8 to 12 years of my career, there has been many instances where something is new in the technology world, then you find support for Python, Java, JavaScript, and that's all. The .NET, there won't be any support for .NET in terms of an SDK or a client. It's usually a very big pain. So many things. And in fact, there were some Microsoft tools that were released for other languages, and .NET was not supported. So because AI is a big deal, we're going to review why this is very important that .NET have this baked in, especially from .NET 8 and 9. Then, of course, standardization. There are so many AI models now. I mean, large language models, maybe 12 popular ones and counting. And depending on your use case and your interaction, people have discovered the strengths and weaknesses. If it's coding, people have observed that this particular language model or a version of the language model it exists better in benchmarks for coding or for image generation, for video generation, for logic and reasoning, and the choice is there. So this feature has enabled that standardization, that you don't have to write different client libraries to connect to different large language models. I can imagine an interface that has general methods and a lot of services for each of these large language models. With a single um, with a single method, you can actually bring in your integration. So we're going to talk about it, and the benefit. The benefit is it makes your code base feature proof. So because of this standardization, you can you don't need to all you need to change is your connection strengths, your parameters, passing just three things: the model you want to use, the type, and your secrets, and the connector, and you're good to go. So one of the very interesting namespaces, and can call them libraries, that is brought in to help .NET developers develop their apps with AI in mind, is the Microsoft Extensions AI, and it's a unified interface set of NuGet packages. The most popular one now is the most developed is the Microsoft Extension.ai OpenAI, among others. And with these connectors, you can actually talk to these OpenAI models with your code. And how you integrate it, it's simple. You can plug it into your code base. You can inject it. You can register it in your dependency so it follows your application lifecycle, and then you can use options pattern, and you can configure it very easily, and it's very simple. All right. I showed. I guess that was refreshing. The pizza. I I I I enjoy more spicy pizza. All right. So we just got the very interesting part. The part that has to do more with actual .NET developers, which is the semantic kernel. So the semantic kernel sits in between your .NET code, and it orchestrates large language models. So you could easily integrate to, excuse me, OpenAI, Gemini, Cloud, and all of this um, a time, or based on your use case. I think that summing up is affecting me. All right. So Semantic Kernel is an SDK made by Microsoft for .NET engineers to orchestrate this communication with large language models, and it's very very seamless. So the purpose is for it to bridge that gap and give this support to .NET developers first, and which is something that I said earlier as well. When something interesting like this is happening in the industry, .NET guys um, are usually left behind. You might have to rely on creating HTTP clients, or using some open source tools. I used to enjoy always identifying um, those gaps where I need to integrate with something and there's no .NET SDK. Then rather than to create my clients, I make it extensible. Then when I'm done, I just export the PCL, now .NET standard, into NuGet for others to use. So this was quoted by Microsoft, and it has as a core to run AI prompt. You can have semantic functions, and they can call out native C# methods. So that's a bridge there, and Of course, it consumes that namespace, the Microsoft extensions AI. I'm going to talk more about it in other slides. So in terms of capacity, um, so standard C# methods um, that the language models can call as tools perform reward actions and access to live data. So, for example, you can talk about a simple prompt that says, "Get me, tell me about the weather in Newcastle," as an human natural language input, and then you can as well have um, semantic function that maps this command into the right method. This is a fundamental problem when you are trying to work with MCPs, where you have problem deciding, or the code has problem deciding, should this route this request to your MCP server, or you should route it to the internet. So let me give you an example. You have MCP, for example, linked in your GitHub Copilot for GitHub, and then you have defined methods that attribute classifications that if you want to search about monkeys, call this method, right? And then there can be problems when GitHub Copilot, for example, can decide where, if to call your MCP method, or if it should route that request to the internet. This solves it in a very smart way because it decides the very method to call by translating your natural language in finding the right method to call. And of course, it creates necessary prompt instructions for LMM based on sharp methods, signatures, and decorators. And it does it automatically for all the connectors that have been integrated. So I have a list of them in the next slide after this. So this is how you can bring all of this into your .NET stack for AI. So you have access to large language models, responsibility. They bring the core intelligence. They have the brain power. Then of course they provide the output, and big players there are OpenAI, Azure AI, and Gemini. Um, I use Gemini for my demo to experiment with it. Um, then of course you have the extension also extension.ai, which provides your connection and also your consumption for different services and modules that have been abstracted based on this. Then you can bring those into your dependency injection, your configuration, and you can actually implement this iChat completion service, which is something that you can easily integrate into your project. And of course, this semantic kernel as well, it's a nugget package that you bring in as well to enable all these things independently of installing those extensions. But of course, you need to connect it with a large language model, and for each large language model, you need to have the connector also installed, and it orchestrates your connection, and of course, the reasoning state there that helps to translate raw input from perhaps your users or from other parts of your program to the LMM, to a language that the LMM understands. Then, most importantly, as well, you have the connector libraries. Like I said, I played with Gemini, and I'm going to show you the next slide. All right. So this is a simple. I have a simple console app that I connected with Gemini with Semantic Kernel, and you can just talk to it like you talk to your normal AI chat interface. So I'm going to get it up quickly, and this is the code behind it. That's the using statement for the semantic kernel package itself, and that is you bringing in the Google connector. So those are two Nugget packages that you can bring in. So if you want to use by the rights, you will see all the other supported connectors with OpenAI, which is most developed, Hugging Face, Olama, and those are for cloud and some other large language models. And it's very, very simple here. You can see where you can have your builder. This, this, for example, is a kernel builder, which is kind of more generic and the simplest way to implement this. You can actually use your web-host builder and pass in the Microsoft.ai extension, and it leverage on your existing web-host builder as well. But this is very, very simple. How you inject Gemini, choose your model, bring in your API key, and build. And once you have registered this, you can always bring your kernel in, and you can invoke prompt async. So if you are going to talk to OpenAI, you use the same invoke prompt or any of the other language models, which is something that is quite interesting. You don't have to have separate implementation for different um, large language models. It's like this superpower which Microsoft tries to build with entity framework, where it added more support for different kind of databases like MySQL, SQL Server, and the rest. And then you will start seeing the likes of the Cosmo DB. You'll be able to interact with it from the default driver and also directly from entity framework. That is exactly how this works as well. Then it's going to be a very quick demo because of the time. So I'm just going to launch it. I hope it still works. Demos love to fail. Okay. Good. Yeah, still going. So yeah, so this is from my input. She say I to Gemini using semantic kernel, and this is how it gets. Fun, but uh, 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 it says Newcastle is home to very first Greg's Bakery. Oh, I Greg's Bakery. I've never eaten. I don't know about the bakery, but that's something I'm going to look out for. When I spoke at Newcastle, I mean Liverpool yesterday, and the fun fact he told me was it was the home to the Beatles, the music legendary band. So this is exactly how it works, and I'll show you the code very, very briefly. Mouse. Uh, Good old Visual Studio. Okay, very simple. Yeah. So this is semantic kernel and Visual Explorer. Okay. There's a latency. Yeah. So this semantic kernel package and your connector. So Gemini is still in alpha. So you can have OpenAI and the rest. And with these two things, you have the superpowers to connect your .NET program. And Yeah, you specify your model ID, which is also standardized across different large language models. Then you bring in the API key. I don't want to show mine. And then, yeah, this is where you register it. So there are different ways of registering your large language model. This is one of the ways you can add it directly as like a scoped or transient into your service registration. That works as well. If you don't want to use a kernel builder, you can actually register the interface it exposes. And then, so inside the connector for Google, the Microsoft AI extensions AI namespace is implemented inside it. And of course, then, yeah, and this is the magic line, one line to rule them all, I would say. So your prompt goes into any kind of LMM, and you can register it as a dependency and consume it in all your projects. And I think that's pretty fantastic. The future, I think the future is now already. There's a shift to AI, and it's not something separate anymore, something from the far distance. So many apps have directly integrated into AI, and as .NET engineers, we should also do the same based on the use case, And for decision makers in enterprises, as well review possible ways by which AI can streamline. And I've seen, interestingly, I've seen many firms switch their code base away from .NET because of some issues like this, where there's need to have native connectivity with strength, and because .NET is not supported, then they decide we are going to go. For some weird reasons, they abandon C Sharp, and but I think Microsoft is making changes regarding that. And of course, Copilot are for code. Um, Many people are not fans of using Copilot as kind of a coding assistant, because I myself, to be honest, I ran Copilot for a couple of months, but I've stopped it. We reverted back to coding the traditional way. But once in a while, I find myself using the AI to digest or read some documentations when I need to. But when we need to have them as actually co-pilots or as an helper for coding, they are very great at doing things that are repetitive, redundant, things that will take your time. You just want to solve it. And of course, developers can derive productivity by bringing all these plugins, building plugins, and of course, data context into their source code. And rather than making API calls REST, you can actually have semantic kernel call very smart functions within your project to talk to your third-party services that have exposed their connectors to the marketplace. And of course, we are keeping watch to future versions of .NET 9 versions, I think 306 now, and 10 and the rest to remain cutting edge and a choice for developing intelligence and cloud native applications. So we are pushing the end of my talk. This first one was when the benchmark for AI was if it could win a chess match with some world best player. But now we are in the general intelligence, where sometimes we get marveled by what it could do, but it's still like a baby. It makes a lot of mistakes, a lot of logic, um, a lot of it actually, and of course Hallucination is also a very big problem. But in the future, we will see a world where an AI becomes super intelligent, and softwares or tools or business flows that that do not implement this will somehow be left behind. So in summary, we discussed Copilot and how it integrates into the Microsoft ecosystems of business tools, and also into the developer IDEs. And of course, we've discussed why Microsoft is trying to introduce the newer versions of .NET for AI focus and inbuilt native. And we've seen how this plays out from the Semantic Kernel SDK released by Microsoft as well. And that QR code is for learning. If you want to learn more about this integration from Microsoft, that QR code will take you right there. And now is the time to ask any questions. Available? Anyone?
Semantic kernel some context. So like, for example, use it like chat with a company, the context of the company data, and it can just answer questions.
Yes. So you can actually use semantic kernel to build something like Copilot itself, the interface that takes the text prompt, attaching photos. So you can attach photos on files, and all these have been standardized. So the way you will send photos to OpenAI is the same way you will send photos to Gemini with semantic kernel. Everything has been standardized from text to photos and images, and also streaming. When you have continuous feed of input and continuous feed of output, all of them have been standardized. You don't have to have separate implementation. So,
Yeah, thanks for the talk. So with the semantic kernel again, it's kind of like platform. One of the things that I've kind of seen with working with data scientists and it almost feels like from a developer point of view is try to bring in like infrastructure as code.
Yeah.
.NET kind of core development kind of starts to expand again. One of the things that we find with kind of AI and LLMs and prompt engineering, a lot of the time what comes back is very unstructured data. So you're giving it a prompt effectively, you want to get that data back into the code that you can physically use.
Yeah.
That becomes quite a little challenge. So I guess the question is kind of how do you feel about .NET developer and platform engineering? Is your role kind of constantly expanding now to almost work alongside data scientists? And they're a different breed. They kind of they're like unstructured data. They're like sometimes being a little bit dirty with the data, whereas as developers we like nice, clean, structured code.
Yeah. Let me clarify your question well. So the experience you have, it's bringing out unstructured or structured.
Yeah. So even if you give it you give LLM
Mm-hmm.
in the prompt and I want my output as this.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're always going to get it as that. Don't got that hallucination, variability.
Yeah. I think in my experience with, like I said, based on the general public's experience with individual large language models, they've seen strengths and weaknesses at where some models actually thrive in terms of really being super diligent about your inputs and how you have defined your output, why some just mess around with doing basically what they like. So I think Microsoft has taken that responsibility of ensuring consistency with, so for example, parameters, custom parameters that define the kind of output that you want from a prompt. And perhaps you give it a JSON model. I want analyze this data and bring the result as a list in this JSON format, right? The best a developer can do is to supply that well, and then the LMM still chooses to to return whatever they want. I think part of the advantages of tooling and is that you have the opportunity of automating rechecks. It's like a retry mechanism that sends a second request to validate to do validation on the initial output. So this might be tricky, and as yeah, exactly. So I've seen Copilot actually GitHub Copilot actually doing that, where before the end result comes back to the user, it sends everything back to validate that is this actually correct. And of course, I've seen in the way that Group works, it kind of goes over a task over and over again, but in each iteration, it changes just one thing, then it goes over it again and changes the next thing. So if you have 10 things like you want to change, Group iterates this flow until it's satisfied. Why something like OpenAI just goes once and it brings that result back. But the semantic kernel kind of standardizes how they talk to these APIs, and we still have very little control over it, but I'm sure it will get better.
There's that question, you can also template the data that you get back from an LLM. So a lot of these CLI tools can just provide them a template of what you expect the output to be, and it just feeds into this template. If you want something structured and rigid, you just
Yeah, it doesn't always obey. Yeah. I think the strength now is ability to talk to different elements and elements, and also different semantic functions that you define in your code base as well. So there's destination to go talk to something in the cloud, and there's destination to talk to methods that you've defined that have the ability to solve um, problems or fetch data from your own APIs or from your database. So they can be used for both. Chaining. I'm not. I've not experimented. But the next, yes, you can use it. For .NET.
kind of master prompt or semantic or that output. But it's about maintaining similar to this.
Yeah.
So we've got so people can connect with Olorunfemi. So I'll put your details in the next couple of days on LinkedIn. But, yeah, feel free to connect. Do you have any more slides or yeah? Thank you.